it was actually the second time we've seen this recently. On August 12th, during the Perseus meteor shower, at around the same time at night, we saw a similar view in the night sky. And that's when we first kind of tried to figure out what exactly it was, because that night there were two launches. There was a Vulcan rocket from Florida, and then there was the Ariane 6 from French Guiana. And that Ariane 6 rocket is what we're actually seeing. When that launches, it enters into a polar orbit. And because of the trajectory, that polar orbit takes it over eastern Canada. So all the way from Newfoundland, New Brunswick, PEI, Nova Scotia, coming across Quebec and parts of Ontario, what you see is you see that deorbiting of the larger upper stage so that the weather satellite that it was carrying can actually enter into its proper orbit. So during that deorbiting process, there's a fuel ejection that occurs. And because it's in the upper atmosphere, that fuel immediately crystallizes. And so you get the sunlight that still is able to reflect off of this upper stage of the Ariane 6 rocket, and then reflecting off of all these ice crystals. And it creates this beautiful spiral that appears to have these arms, almost like a spiral galaxy's arms. And it's moving through the sky very, very slowly, because from our perspective, because it's so high up in altitude, it doesn't appear to be moving very fast as it enters into that polar orbit. Now, as that fuel crystallizes and that defueling stops, those little particles start to separate out. So if you're in a location where you can watch that part of the process, it actually looks like these little bits of light starting to cascade down from this spiral glitter bomb that's up there in the night sky. The one concern is the amount of things going into orbit is starting to become incredibly unwieldy. And there are a lot of companies and a lot of groups that are putting up these satellites of these combinations of satellites, these huge chains. And it's understandable from the Earth observation perspective. We do need really good coverage to have accurate information for environmental changes, for disaster management, for farming and agriculture, for transportation routes. It's really useful. But the satellites have to be designed and used in such a way that they don't pollute our night sky, and they don't prevent us from actually making the observations that we need for the furtherment of science. So every time we try to image, whether it's a exoplanet transiting a distant star, whether it's a galaxy and trying to see the degree at which a star has gone supernova, or whether it's a nebula and you're trying to just take a nice, beautiful picture of the gases, about half of your images end up having to be discarded because there's a satellite trail passing through them. There's so many in the night sky now that when we're out, people will point, go, is that the ISS? Is that the ISS? Is that the ISS? And it's just other satellites. There are so many of them out there now that are bright enough because they're not manufactured or they're not designed in a way to minimize the reflection back down. And that's where, the treaties that we signed with the International Astronomical Union and with the development of space and the student groups that put up CubeSats, a lot of that is with the awareness that we have to protect our dark skies, that we have to protect our view of the night sky, but also that you have to minimize the possibility of collisions in space. And when there's collisions between satellites, or when a satellite doesn't quite go into the right orbit, there has to be proper disposal techniques. While back, there was a rocket from the Chinese that they actually exploded because it wasn't in the correct trajectory, but that explosion left debris that we were worried about whether or not it would reach the ISS, and the ISS actually had to be shifted in altitude to ensure that there wouldn't be that overlap. And so these different arrangements and partnerships that we have internationally, following them and ensuring private companies also are signed on to them and have to live to those same standards, is an incredible area of importance for the international community right now.